play as a Ram will be a pass off play action. Go figure. To the 45-yard line. He hits Van Jefferson, who he probably didn't even meet until yesterday. Carr under pressure. Softball is picked off in the end zone. Ernest Jones threw it down the sideline, and it is caught by Skoranek. Ben Skoranek with a great catch, a contested catch, all the way to the 4-10. Mayfield to the end zone to Jefferson. Is that possible? Touchdown. Any magic here? No. Taylor Rapp to seal it.
Hey guys, welcome to another East Coast Rams podcast. I am your co-host Ashton with my awesome co-host Zac. Baker Mayfield, Zac. Wow, just a wild ride, at least towards the end. Not so much the first three quarters of the match. How are you doing, Zac? Are you recovered from like that surreal ending? Because I still can't believe we won that game.
You know, I definitely have to eat some crow a bit because I was a Baker Mayfield naysayer. I wasn't through. Like I said in the last episode, and on Twitter and stuff like that. I understood the business aspect. I understood that this was kind of like um, there was a no lose situation when it came to this, um, but I was impressed. We'll break down the game and kind of our thoughts, ins and outs of it, because this is a different game. This isn't just a normal game where we're breaking things down. We get to talk about how Baker Mayfield did, bringing him in only within less than 3 days worth of knowledge. How these other players, 2 days. I mean, I think they said he came in
on a short week.
On a short week. The whole team was, recovering from a disappointing end to a Seattle game where they nearly, clinched a win there. But this was a game where it was a no holds back. The Coach McVay just didn't care. I mean, obviously we saw 3 run plays for Wolford, and then he was pulled, and they just were like, "We'll just Baker Mayfield." I mean, he did fine on the first 2 drives, so let's just keep it going and keep him cooking, and he definitely did that.
And he wasn't perfect by any means. He had some where you could tell that he didn't exactly know where the wide receiver was supposed to be, especially in the first 3 drives. But let's not all kid ourselves. This is a guy, and as you've heard 10,000 times up to this point, a guy with 2 days of preparation, not 2 full days, not 2 full practice days, 2 days before a short week to play. Both me and you, Zac, did not expect him to play the full game.
For sure. I mean, at that point, I don't know why at the point where he was not out there for 3 plays, and those were the first 3 plays of the game. I'm not really sure why they didn't just like let him start to begin with, but the outcome was a win, and it was just fun. It was fun to watch, and it was fun to see what he could do, and he played really well. Um, even against odds where it seemed like the refs were completely against us for at least 95% of the game.
Yeah, I mean, I will say this with Baker or with Wolford, outside of the fact that, man, the dude looked like a beat puppy for most of that game when it would zoom into him. I felt so bad when I saw him, but it's like we've said many times, you only get so many opportunities in the NFL. He had his shots. It's not like he didn't get chances, and
I mean,
he
for
didn't
those
do great.
he didn't, and for those who like Wolford, I mean, let's all just remember that he did almost get. Again, it is an almost win, but he did bring the team last week into a spot that they haven't seen since week 2, and that was hitting past the 20-point mark. So I felt like he was going to get more play than he did. But at this, again, like, as we've been saying, as you said last week, right before this game, and then throughout this game, it's there's not a lose situation. Why don't you put someone who was a first round pick up and see what he does? I mean, it's your season's pretty much over as it is. I mean, yes, there's a slimmer of a chance, but the season's pretty much over. You really don't have anything else to play for other than your pride, which every player on that team is playing for pride. And it was it was just a good experience, and it was a good experiment, and it was an experiment that McVay is very good at playing with. I mean, this tells you how good. I mean, not only how good of a player Baker Mayfield is, because he's a great player, um, but I mean, he had to get some coaching from McVay on how to run the plays and what to tell the team and things like that. And on that execution wise as well, I think was really well done.
Yeah, it was definitely a wild game for most of the game. I thought Baker was doing solid. I thought the run game was a big hindrance for a majority of this game and was causing a lot of issues. Uh, Apparently Sean McVay's decided just to force feed Cam Akers. Man, I'm seeing this as Zach. They want to raise his value to trade him for like minimal draft picks. He's not going to be on this team next year. Uh, do you have any comment on Cam Akers' game and how?
Yeah, obviously, we this game would have been, I think, completely different if we didn't get put in the spot. I mean, we got put in two bad positions in this game that were, I mean, honestly, Mayfield did a great job, but it resulted in two poor executions. One is, as you're referring to, Cam Akers and his fumble. The other one was with Shelton and his penalty. But really, that brought us out of a spot where we were driving hard, and potentially could have got a touchdown in there, if not a field goal. So. Um, I thought Cam Akers was improving, especially with last week. With his two touchdowns, he was actually making pretty good runs. Um, but this time it seemed like he was caught off. And I mean, honestly, when he hits that fumble, you see the dread in his eyes. And realistically, you need to be able to pick yourself up, and you need to be able to be like, yeah, I know, I own this, but I need to be better. And we could tell that he was just so down that, I don't know, maybe McVay didn't want to put him back in. I mean, it was a while before we really got to see Cam Akers back in, but he did come back in, and he did make a few good more runs towards the very end, plus getting that late touchdown.
His problem though is when he gets a line share of the carries, and we saw this even in 2020, he fumbles. He
Hmm.
has a he has a very high likelihood of fumbling when he gets more than 15 carries a game. And that's a problem. That's a big issue, especially in a struggling offense where you need any points. And if you fumble past the 40-yard line of the opponents, it's like you're giving away points there.
For sure, and I don't know if that's just like a, chip on a shoulder kind of attitude, and it just leads to you're in there, you're in there, and in there. It could just be bad luck. I mean, I get it. I That guy. I mean, it did punch
Not this
squarely at the
quantity.
ball.
It,
Um,
yeah, but at this quantity he's fumbling, that's not luck,
For
right?
sure. I mean, I get it. I mean, I think there's sometimes where it's bad luck and sometimes it's bad football. And um, you know, whichever one was this week's episode, I think it's still the same, is that you can't have it. And
Mhm.
I think the Rams, are realizing that. I think they realized it before. Not really sure, other than knowing that he potentially could have value postseason for a trade. That's that I'm on your page. I think that's the only reason why he's getting the lion's share, and why we haven't seen the full Kyron Williams show.
Yeah. Yeah, and after that fumble, it basically remains 13-3 up until the fourth quarter. Uh until the Raiders get another field goal, and then on our last two possessions, we get two touchdowns. These two drives, Zach, were very interesting drives with how McVay kind of chose to go down the field. And, I really felt like the hurry up was so good for Baker in this type of situation, and he handled it well. And however he was communicating to the wide receivers, it worked, right?
Hmm. Yeah, I mean, it was. I mean, they did a fantastic job, and I mean, even the 2 minute drill. All the reports are coming in that he learned that 2 minute drill that day, like literally before they got on the bus to head to SoFi Stadium for that night. They did a walkthrough of the 2 minute drill, and how clutch was it that that came into play this game, driving 98 yards with only a minute and 40 seconds left um, on the clock. And how good was our defense to stop them? Because it's been hard. Our defense has played very well, and they played very well last night. But it's been hard for them to get a 3 and out, and that's really what the Rams needed. I mean, they got the clock down to um, less than 2 minutes, and they needed, or less than 3 minutes, and they needed the defense to do a 3 and out so that they had at least a chance to make the play. And so our defense stepped up, and they were able to hold a running play that for the most part was kind of the weakness to the Rams. Though they did pretty good job compared to the other teams that uh, the Raiders have been up against over the last several weeks.
Yeah, Josh Jacobs has just been destroying teams. And he had a good day, but not a great one.
I mean,
Um
27 carries for 99 yards. I mean, that's a lot of
27
carries.
carries is a lot, yeah.
That's a lot of carries, but that doesn't. I mean, that's a lot of
That's 3
carries.
yards per carry.
Right, like, that's not great, as far as per yards per carry, um, but he was efficient, and, we clearly saw that. I'm not really sure why Carr didn't throw the ball more, especially in the second half. Um, they were kind of wrecking shop in the first half. I mean, yes, using Jacobs, but, getting in there and, getting it to Devontae Adams. I mean, the few times that he did have it, um and um, a couple of the other receiving teams like Hollins. I mean, he seemed like he was having a good time, and they just never targeted him again. It felt like the Raiders were like in control of most of the game, but really, when you look at their stats, it wasn't super impressive. Other than Josh Jacobs' 99 yards, which then, if you add the 27 carries, is not super impressive of in
And
itself.
I believe half of those came off of big chunk run too. Like he had one 30, 40 yard run. Or not half,
No,
but
yeah, his longest was only 15 yards.
oh, 15. Oh, I
Mac
think I'm thinking
Hollins.
of Devontae Adams, who had
Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah.
like half
He
of his yards came off of a reception.
yeah,
But
he had a 35 long one.
yeah, so either way, it really well done on this defense to kind of bottle him up, and the Raiders were trying to get him starting, and he never really started. He did get hurt, so that could have played into it a little bit. I thought they were kind of highlighting Ramsey a little bit too much for one catch. I mean, great catch by Devonte Adams, one handed. It's not like he was just wide open and he just made a simple like bam 50-yard catch with no effort. Like Ramsey was there, just Adams had a good catch. So
Yeah, yeah.
that was a little overblown in my opinion.
I think so too, and I think it's just because it's Ramsey. Ramsey, like,
Yeah.
being that top cornerback. Whenever a top cornerback gets blown, I mean, shoot, I feel like, I mean, it happens. It happens to every top corner that they just get highlighted more than anybody else. Um, there was even another one where he Devonte Adams got on Ramsey, but it was so hard because Devonte Adams is a great receiver, and one of the good things that he the on the second one that Ramsey missed out on was Like he put his hands out just right when the ball was coming, like in his hands. Like Ramsey didn't even have time to react that he was even being attempted for the ball. And again, it's just a good play by Devonte Adams. And but I don't think it's something to put against Ramsey. I mean, Ramsey played really well. It's cornerbacks get the bad rap when a play gets made, but they don't get any of the credit when their player gets taken out because they're not being targeted. And I think for the most part, he was taking out um, his assigned target.
Now, Zach, let's talk about Cam Akers more a little bit. So, Cam Akers got 12 carries for 42 yards and a 3.5 average and a TD. What, like, I'm. What's your opinion on why we are exactly using him, trying to make him the workhorse? Do you think they don't trust Kyron Williams? Do you think it's a value thing? What's your opinion on that situation?
Yeah, I think it is a value thing. I could see it two ways. I could see it as being a value, but it could also be trying to keep Kyron healthy, and trying to get him to learn the offense. Maybe he's not there 100% in the practices, um, and he still has some learning to do, and might as well use Cam Akers to see where they can do postseason. Um, while still getting Kyron Williams up to speed on things. So that's kind of where I would see it as. And then I think Sean McVay is kind of cautious a little bit. I mean, shoot, how many times have we seen um, in times where it doesn't really matter? He puts in a player and they get injured. That happened with Cooper Cup. That's happened numerous times. And so it's like um, why risk? Um, your potential lead back for the next season in this especially when you're not really playing for a whole lot. What about
Yeah,
you?
I mean, we'll talk about this more whenever we get to the giraffe stuff. But honestly, I think they're just doing it so they can uh trade Akers for something like a 6th or 5th round pick. And I think honestly, Zach, they're going to get 2 running backs in this draft, and one pretty high. Um, there's a possibility if Mayfield leaves. I do think they're gonna draft a backup QB. Um, I definitely think they're gonna draft or sign a other undrafted free agent. Probably draft like mid round, like 4th or 5th, if I'm guessing. But this team has a lot of holes to fill, and we'll preview that a little bit more. But moving on with the rest of this game, let's talk about the receiving. Zach, who stood out to you receiving wise this game?
I think it has to be Ben Skronik. I mean, he had even though he did not get the touchdown, he had a lights out game. I mean, he was very comfortable. He was, even in times where, Mayfield may have, I would say, slightly overthrown the ball. Ben Skronik, he was there. He jumped for those balls, and was able to make great plays. The one towards the end where it was more of a contested catch. He did a great job of pulling that in and securing it. It's always great when your receivers are averaging more than 10 yards a game, and they had four receivers averaging more than 10 yards per target. So I think he did an excellent job, and he was definitely the safety blanket and the go to for Baker Mayfield.
No, I would agree with you. I would also say Tutu Atwell. I thought he had a surprisingly really solid game. He was constantly open. I thought if Baker had placed that ball a little bit differently. I don't know if that was, and this is where it's kind of hard to like judge these plays. Is I don't know if it was because Tutu didn't run the exact right route, if he didn't turn at the angle that Baker anticipated, if Baker himself just missed through it. Like that's where it's kind of hard to tell what happened there with that TD where they got the pass
Mhm.
interference. Um, that should have been touchdown. So it, and we know Baker Mayfield can throw that far. The question is, you have to have a lot go right for a touchdown like that, and you have to have a lot between the wide receiver and QB on the same page. And clearly, we are not expecting Baker Mayfield after 2 days of barely even playing snaps with our wide receivers to have any sort of chemistry with them. So I don't
Yeah,
expect them to make that pass, but it's kind of interesting to see like Tutu Atwell would have had a great night if it not been for that kind of pass interference.
yeah. I mean, that one was, I believe it was overthrown. I feel like if I even on the replay and even the commentators of the game kind of made it seem like maybe Tutu sold that pass interference call, because it did look like it was just slightly farther than he could have reached, and maybe not. We will obviously never know.
I mean,
Um,
Tutu runs pretty fast. I was like, it looks like that when you slow it down, but when you're watching him run at full speed, eh, I think he could have made a diving catch.
and it's
Like
possible. I think the other thing is it's Mayfield. He was here for two, and we just keep like I feel like we keep like rambling on about this, and it almost make it feels like Mayfield has been here longer than 2 days or just over 48 hours, and to the reality is like he wasn't, and so he doesn't have the chemistry with this team and with the playbook, and it's just probably one of those things where
he
once
has
you
played.
break 30 yards, like once you break that 30-yard radius, going much further of that, I think your percentage drops significantly, especially if you don't have that chemistry. That's just my opinion, but because I mean, other than that, I mean, Mayfield was making 20, like multiple 20s, 20-yard throws, 30-yard throw, like he was making good plays. Which we haven't seen in a very long time. But I think once you break that 30-yard mark, it becomes harder for that trust in knowing where that receiver is going to be. And just because I mean Atwell is so fast, and Mayfield may have heard like, oh, he's a fast guy. I got to get him. I got to throw it farther. Because I know he can get it to it, and maybe there's kind of that mentality in your head. I don't know. I mean, obviously
Mhm.
we're not in Mayfield's head, but that's just my opinion.
Yeah, I will say it took him 3 days to have a better game at QB than either of our backups have in their entire history on this team, in my opinion. Because in my eyes, he has 2 touchdowns and 0 interceptions, with what 230 yards. That throw he got on what was it, third or fourth down, the Cam Akers,
Hmm.
that should have been touchdown. That Cam Akers, if that was Kyron Williams, I believe Zach he gets in the end zone. Honestly, um,
Yeah, I
I
mean,
was
I definitely think that this point differential could have been way different. And obviously, if we would have scored those 10 points, the seven, because seven, thinking that after the fumble we would have got 7 points, or the stupid penalty that forced us to kick a 61-yard field goal and miss that one. We don't know what position we would have been at the very end, but I do think points were left off the board, and that's not Mayfield's fault. I think none of those point values was because I mean those points off the board was not because of Mayfield.
Yeah, he did have let's do point on put on kind of like the critical hat here and kind of like critique Mayfield a bit. I will say he had 2 passes, Zach, that were bad,
Mhm.
questionable bad. That interception, yes, it was a hold. Even if he doesn't hold, that gets intercepted. Uh, so it was, he
Yeah, that
might have
was
been
that was a
open,
lucky
but I
break on our end. That was the
yeah,
only lucky
I think he
break.
was getting cut. I think he was cutting ahead of that ball no matter what. So that was not a good decision on his part, and hopefully he can learn from that mistake without having to pay for it.
Hmm. Yeah.
Uh, But you see that a lot with Mayfield. He's a gunslinger. A lot like Stafford in some senses. I would say he has less of an arm than Stafford, so it's going to be interesting how he fits into this McVay system.
But he is a lot
Um,
more mobile than Stafford. He likes to get out
yes,
of the pocket more. He likes to, run, and he's able. And not saying Stafford doesn't, but I think Mayfield has, that little bit more of a spark to make that run play. And we saw that a couple of times where he felt he was more comfortable running it than throwing it, which is great, especially for someone who's only learned the playbook for 48 hours. When you know that you rather just try to run it, then that's what you need to do and not try to force feed anything. And I don't think Mayfield did try to force feed. I think some of the errors he made, it's just that, not clicking and not having that relationship with the receiver, not maybe knowing the playbook as well, things like that. And so, given that, again, I eat crow for what I said about Mayfield. I think this was obviously a good move. Obviously, this was one game. We'll see how he does. He has 11 days to learn um, learn more of the playbook and learn to play with the team better before they hit Green Bay. But um, I think he did a great job.
yeah. And we'll continue to see how he does, and maybe he falls off and goes through a cliff. But we'll be along for the ride. Let's talk about the defense a little bit. Uh, Bobby Wagner, another really good week, leads the team with 14 tackles this week. Ernest Jones got an interception, Zach. Our favorite player, Taylor Rapp, had a game ending interception. Um, Pretty easy, but I'm happy he caught it. Doesn't always happen. And then Kyer Thomas had a tackle for loss. Michael Hoyt, your boy Michael Hoyt, Zach, he struggled.
He
He
did.
struggled pretty badly this game. They were, I would say, their touchdown drive, their first one, was mainly due to him not being able to seal the edge.
Yeah, and I think the Raiders exploited it this time around. They were quicker with the ball. They got the ball out quicker than I think Geno Smith did. They did a lot more sweeps that just with fast receivers. When you're going up against a when you're going up against a 300-pound um,
D tackle.
yeah, D tackle that um you're just gonna not do so well. I mean, there was a couple times where he slipped, which obviously is not good, but a lot of times it was just beaten because just the other player was just so fast and they did faster things than I think the Seahawks did. So um definitely did not do as well this week as he did last week. Um, but at the same time, there was other players who caused problems, not because of their skill, but because of
It was
their
worth a
ability to
try.
catch the flag.
It was
Yeah.
worth a try. We haven't had anyone producing on the other side of Leonard Floyd, right? No one else has produced there. Really, this year. So, I'm fine putting him in, and then they put in Kara Thomas after they kept on abusing Michael Hoyt. I'm sorry, Hoyt. That's the truth. They were abusing you,
Mhm.
and it was very clear for like a drive and a half. And then Hoyt looked a lot better and very solid. So I'm happy. He kind of clamped that down, and that's when you started to see all the 3 and outs.
Mhm.
From our defense was basically when they stopped that. That was the only way they were getting yards out of like one Moss catch by Devonte Adams.
Yeah. And, someone who I do want to, say a special thank you to is Greg Gaines. I mean, he had a great night,
Yeah.
and he's the player that we need because we don't have Aaron Donald. And so I think he played really well. He kind of filled in that spot. He was able to, you know, be a presence in Carr's face and kind of make him have to when he did have to throw quickly, which a lot of times forced him to um, throw it away or miss the receiver, things like that. So I was super impressed by Greg Gaines and his ability. I think Pro Football had him having like a 90 percent. So um,
He had a
so
really good night. Do you think Zach, with him doing so good, like next year when AD is back, do you think we should shift Aaron Donald to the right side, seeing that we're struggling to get pressure on that right side?
I mean, if you don't find a another person, then I think you're going to have to look into it. And
I'm not saying
obviously,
put him at linebacker, by the way, guys. I'm talking about right end. Just
yeah,
so people don't, you know how people are.
yeah. But it's Aaron Donald, so he's going to play whatever he wants to play, and he's the mastermind of his own. Where if he knows where he thinks he can exploit, he'll shift over. So I definitely don't put any doubt that having Gaines there is a plus to Aaron Donald and what he can do, and just seeing those two on the field at the same time, I think just truly can wreak havoc to defenses. And I'm really hoping that we're able to see Aaron Donald come back against Green Bay, because I definitely think it's going to be needed to consistently put pressure in Aaron Rodgers' face.
Yeah, and let's talk about our linebackers. Eh, Zach, how impressive is Ernest Jones? He's the best linebacker the Rams have had. Well, I'm not counting Bobby Wagner, but the best linebacker the Rams have drafted in a while.
Yeah,
Just
no,
super
yeah, I
impressive.
thought he did a great job again last night. And it's you've been kind of pushing the Ernest Jones line for for a while now. And um, he's definitely proven himself to being a star at that position. And I think it's great that that we have Bobby Wagner too. I think that will actually make him better. And I think we have seen him be better. And him getting that interception in the end zone was just awesome. And it's just something that was needed that we haven't seen in so many weeks, where the Rams were able to actually do a takeaway.
Yeah, and I just remember all these people telling me how trash he was. And the funny thing was, I was watching draft with my brother-in-law, who is a Carolina fan, and I remember when we picked Ernest Jones, and I didn't think we were going to pick him because I thought he was going to probably get picked around later. But when we picked him, I was so happy, and my brother-in-law was so happy. I knew we were getting a stud. I really thought he was a diamond in a rough. I thought he was better than all the linebackers left. And I remember all these people just telling me how trash he was compared to all these other linebackers, that I will remind people almost all of them are not starting in the NFL right now. And I think half of them have been cut from their teams.
Wow.
Yeah. So like Isaiah Simmons is a good one, but he's a first round pick. You're not going to get him.
Hmm.
Patrick Queen, he was a second round pick. We weren't going to get him. And then Zach Braun, Kenneth Murray, Troy Day, like all these other people just, and he's not even on the list. So it's it's kind of crazy that all these Rams fans were telling me like that the Rams made a terrible pick, but I just knew from watching him he was going to be great. And yeah, be patient with the other guy I've been touting up at cornerback, because he's had a rough season, but he's a rookie, and I think he'll get a lot better.
For sure.
Yeah, but Zach, let's kind of start the preview the Packers game. We're back at Lambeau Field. Zach, for some reason we always play the Packers at Lambeau. It feels like it.
It feels like we've done it the last several seasons.
Yeah. It's a little annoying, but we didn't have to do it last season because San Fran did that task for us.
That's for sure. Yeah.
Um, The Packers, you could say they were in the exact same boat as us this season. A team with a lot of expectations. They go in, have some injuries. I would say to a less extent than the Rams, and has severely disappointed. Um, just 5-8 record. Aaron Rodgers has struggled to find any chemistry with any of his wide receivers. They have a rookie that he's kind of latched onto in the last few weeks, so we're gonna have to kind of watch out for that rookie wide receiver. A lot of the more older ones had been put on IR. What's your reaction to this Packers team, and what are you kind of seeing as keys to winning this game?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like it's kind of how the Rams were feeling, kind of going into the season. I feel like Green Bay is always kind of at the top of the list. Like, oh yeah, well, yeah, they're going to make the playoffs. The Rams coming off a Super Bowl win. Oh yeah, they got the talent. They're going to be in the playoffs. Same thing with Tampa Bay, and so um, just kind of seeing this kind of demise of both teams, unfortunately, is it's going to be interesting. And I think that, if the Rams can play a better defensive game against Green Bay, I think the Rams do have a chance. There's again, we gotta hit with some injury news over the last couple of weeks, or over the last couple of days from this past game. But I still think the core team that we have is able to put up. I think we saw that they could have put up more than 20 points this past game, and they were close in doing so multiple times. So honestly, I think that I think the Rams can be favored into this game, especially with their performance this past week.
Yeah, that fumble hurt us, and that penalty to basically push back the field goal far enough for Gay to miss kind of hurt us too. So, definitely should have had more points. Solid Green Bay team. I really do think that this is going to be a more pass heavy game by us. I think Baker's going to have to sling it. Um, it'll be interesting, Zach, to see if our passing game can improve after a few days of practice. It's going to be a tough game, and I really hope we can pull it out. Do you have predictions for this game?
I mean, this. I don't know if I have a prediction as far as what the point values would be. Um, I'm always the optimistic person of this group, especially when it comes to the Rams. But I think that they can win this game. I think with Green Bay not doing so well, you're looking at um, y- you're just looking at a multiple like Rodgers hasn't been the same, and he's been kind of beat up and kind of injured. And is he? Won't he play based on injury? And it looks like he's been fine. Are they? Who are they up against this week? Ooh. It kind of depends on how. I guess they're on a bye this week, so their actually next game isn't even until the Rams game. So that gives Rodgers a little time to get healthy than he was. So I don't know. This is going to be a tricky game. I'm hoping. Obviously, I'm always pulling for the Rams to win. Monday night football game. It's gonna be cold up there. Especially since it's going to be at 8 o'clock, or I guess it's probably what 7 o'clock there, 7 p.m. Central Time. They're on Central Time, I believe. So it's going to be cold up there, and can they do it? Baker Mayfield should be used to the cold from being in Cleveland, so um, I think that's a good thing on our end if he is going to be the quarterback moving forward.
Yeah, we are looking around 32 to 20 on Saturday next week, and I assume Sunday would be very similar. So it's going to be the mid 20s. So cold, cold.
Yes, indeed. So, but yeah, I think it all just depends on how things go this week. I think that things can improve once you learn the playbook a little bit better. Um, I think Baker Mayfield has a lot that he wants to prove, even still. So as long as our offensive line can kind of hold up, this was the second week in a row that we've actually had the same offensive line. So yay for that. The first time in 12 weeks that we can say that. So um, super excited to see that kind of unfold, but hopefully they can protect because I mean, even even with having the same offensive line, Mayfield still was sacked 4 times for a loss of 19 yards. So that needs to be cleaned up. Um, and we need to figure things out offensively, um, to put us in a better spot. Whether that's whatever we can do um, to make that better. But so hopeful that the Rams pull this out because I think they really do have a shot of winning this game.
Yep, Zach. Hopefully they can win it. And thank you guys for being patient with us over these last few weeks. It's been a rough few weeks for the team. Been kind of hard for us to get through these podcasts. They haven't really given us much to talk about, and appreciate your support. And we'll keep on trucking along, even if they keep on struggling. And then we'll move on to brighter pastures with the draft, and me and Zach can talk about people that we have only seen a few minutes of tape on, and try to give our analysis. I'll at least try to talk about some South Carolina players that are potentially draftable, and some Georgia players. So, and
Yeah,
get
and
your
I'm
insights
hopeful.
there.
I'm hopeful that since the combine will be back in Indianapolis, that I'll be able to attend again and kind of do a little bit more reporting and do a little bit more fun things while that's going on, and be able to attend multiple days other than just the one day, just to kind of give more content for those who do listen to us every day, and we're eternally grateful for that.
Yeah, that sounds like a lot of fun, Zach. Combine. Need to head out there one day and try to might be able to do that this year.
It's cool. I mean, especially since the tickets are free, like it costs you nothing to go to these things, other than if you want to buy, over expensive nachos and beer or whatever. But other than that, it's free for anybody who wants to come in, and it's kind of fun just to get to see the prospects and what they go through and the drills and stuff like that. I'm always impressed. I always like to go to the quarterback, wide receiver ones. But I think it would be just as interesting to go, see the defensive players and things like that, and the running backs. I think definitely that's obviously something that we're looking for over the next year. So something that I'll definitely have to keep my eyes open for. So yes, more great content is coming. We're about to hit our 1 year anniversary. So probably our next podcast might be our 1 year anniversary podcast. So be on the lookout for that. But I think that's going to wrap it up for this week's episode of the East Coast Rams podcast. You can always send questions and feedback to feedback@eastcoastrams.com, or hit us up on Twitter. Our official East Coast Rams Twitter account is @East Coast Rams. Ashton, how can people stay connected with you?
They can find me at RamFanAshton1 on Twitter.
Yeah, and if you haven't noticed that Ashton has changed his profile picture, which totally threw me off by the loop for the good last 24 hours. So always fun to see his updated QB photo as they roll out. So you can find me at Zach Mayer. And reminder that we are also on YouTube, youtube.com/at East Coast Rams. Even if you subscribe to the podcast through your favorite podcast catcher of choice, it would be really helpful if you guys would also subscribe to the YouTube channel as well. This just helps us, get better listings on, YouTube's algorithm. If you review us on Apple Podcast, or any of the podcast apps, Spotify, things like that, that definitely helps us get out there more. And it's a free way that you guys can help support the podcast. So, with that, we are on in a little bit of a break because we don't play obviously this Sunday, and we don't play next Sunday. We have to wait till Monday Night Football. So we get an extra couple of days of rest along with the players. So enjoy this victory week that we can kind of claim. And yeah, more great things to come. So we're going to get it done on Sunday, Ramley. Horns up.